Can you talk a little bit about the development of clear sight, uh, breathing energy through the eye gate versus through the third eye, and what different kinds of sight can be developed, mental, astral?
Sure. As Mark Rasmus once told me, the energy will do whatever it is you train it to do. Okay, this is something that people really miss out on. And one of the reasons why you need to be able to differentiate between the material or vital, astral, mental, akashic, and so on levels of existence. Clearly. When you're doing the eye gate exercises, right, you're breathing energy in through the eyes and out through the eyes. You're working with the physical apparatus of the eye. Okay. Now, when you're trying to develop clairvoyance, that's part of the equation. The physical eye itself has to be developed to a certain degree. What that means exactly and how exactly that works is a bit of a mystery, but if you want to have clairvoyance with the eyes open, and by that most people mean astral or mental level clairvoyance, you have to train the eye itself. On the other hand, if you're mostly interested in mental wandering, and some people would call astral travel, then working with the third eye point is actually pretty effective by itself. Now, again, we typically juggle this by doing the exercises for mental wandering with the eyes closed and exercises for direct clairvoyance with the eyes open. That's going to move that point of fixation either passively or actively, either way. Also, there are some things about the structure of the brain that activates certain points of it by using the third eye point that you don't get with training the physical eyes. So this is a fancy way of saying you should probably train both, but they do have slightly different effects. Also, one of the big issues with skills like clairvoyance is you get what you train. So if you train mostly with vital energy through those gates or the third eye point, you're going to see mostly vital level phenomenon. If you train with astral energy, you're going to see mostly astral level phenomenon. If you train with akasha, akashic level phenomena, and so on and so on and so on. So when it comes to clairvoyance and clairaudience, how it's been trained has a lot to do with what the person ends up getting. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about the physical point of fixation and how that can change things. We've talked about how the different kinds of energies involved can change what you're going to get. And by the way, all this works for clairaudience and clairsentience and clairgustinance, subtle sense of taste and smell as well. But there's a third part of this that doesn't get spoken about a whole lot. That's the psychological nature of having clairaudience or clairvoyance. You're going to run into a lot of people who've got really good energy skills. If you have the ability to scan their body using subtle perception, you'll find that the pipes or the mechanism for clairvoyance or clairaudience are fully connected in them. They're fully developed. They have no clairvoyance and no clairaudience of any kind. Why? They don't want it. Now, whether this not wanting to have that skill was introduced by society, brought in by one of their egregores, brought in by their cultural upbringing, brought in by their family, or quite simply brought in by fear on their part, is irrelevant. Until that psychological block towards activating those senses gets overcome, they're not going to have them. And this can take a really long time. Or it can be done subtly through the use of certain compounds, sleep deprivation, sudden trauma, basically, or sudden duress is probably a better word for it. And this is where a lot of rites of initiation come from in more traditional systems. They shock people out of their normal level of awareness and force them to deal with these things. That mental aspect in many cases is actually the biggest obstacle to developing clairvoyance and clairaudience. Because once you start seeing more of reality and hearing more of reality, you are now forced to deal with reality on a level that previously you didn't. Specifically, you're going to see things and know things about other people, some of which are wonderful, some of which are horrible, many of which are disturbing. For people who have a hard time dealing with others as real people and not objects, and we all know people like this, clairvoyance and clairaudience, when they're developed, can literally drive someone like that insane, because it completely shatters their worldview. It shatters this myth they have of their being the center of the universe. And if you have a little bit of Schadenfreude, that can be enjoyable to watch happen. But when you're dealing with someone who's so mentally constipated that they literally think they're the center of the universe, and their clairvoyance and clairaudience gets turned on, it will shatter their world. And a lot of people don't know how to handle that kind of thing. So part of that psychological resistance is not wanting to see the world as it actually is, maintaining your own internal myths that simply make life a lot more comfortable. I mean, if you really think other people aren't real or don't matter, all of a sudden having access to their full emotional and personal background, that's going to be pretty overwhelming, and pretty well deserved, but we can leave the judgment part of this whole thing out of it. But ultimately, clairvoyance and clairaudience come with a lot of responsibility and a lot of depth and a lot of pain if you're not willing to be exceptionally mature about who you are. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people never get very far with this stuff. This is what I try to tell people about esoterica in general. Magic, esoterica, meditation is not a tool for avoiding reality. It's not a tool for escapism. It's a tool for more completely immersing yourself into reality. And when you see yourself clearly, and you see other people clearly, and you begin to understand where you fit in the universe, and that position might not be very important, and chances are it's not. If you have a certain kind of ego or belief about yourself, that's going to be really painful. I've been very repetitive here, but that's because, guys, I'm not talking to you in person. This isn't a conversation we're going to be able to have where I can engage in a lot of nuance. So I'll repeat myself a few times just to make sure the point is gained. But if you're looking for clairvoyance and clairaudience for entertainment's sake, you're going to be very disappointed. On the other hand, if you want it in order to be better at what you do, super, super, super useful.